You actually needed Mr. DeGuerin, probably.
Okay.
I was ready, willing, and able.
Thank you. But this is your issue, his issue.
Okay,
So,
got it.
thank you. So, very, very quickly, Your Honor, my understanding from the defense, Your Honor, is that Dr. Altshuler, due to his personal illness and just age, will not be able to testify. My concern is that we're not very far away, and I don't have any discovery. If they're planning on calling any other expert, I need to know who that expert is, I need to know what an offer of proof is, and I need to be able to have the opportunity to review whatever they're going to be testifying to.
Mr. DeGuerin, are you presenting that same evidence with a different witness?
No, not at this point. We don't know.
So my position would be...
Well, I understand our obligations.
Well,
Okay, Mr. DeGuerin, you have the obligation to turn over discovery when you determine that you are calling a witness.
Yes, sir.
When you make that determination, you must immediately, if it's not because we're in the middle of trial, the rule of 30 days before trial obviously doesn't apply. Instead, the rule is that you must turn over any such discovery immediately upon that decision to call a witness.
I understand.
Mr. Lewin?
Obviously, I'm just concerned that, considering that they'd made the decision to call the expert, my concern is, Your Honor, that they will retain an expert late. I will get the discovery late, and then the excuse will be, well, we just retained this person. So I think the court certainly has within its authority to order them at this point. Apparently, Dr. Altshuler has been unavailable since May of 2020. I know Mr. DeGuerin only was made aware of that apparently last month. But I think, Your Honor, what we would request is that they provide discovery of whatever expert they're going to have by the end of this month, because Mr. Durst is going to be on the stand sometime next month. I need to have time.
I think it's obvious they'd have to make that decision by the end of the month. I mean, as I understood the testimony, or purported testimony, was that Mr. Durst is on the spectrum. That would explain some of his behavior. It's not something that would amount to a defense. Rather, it would be something that would tend to explain anomalous behavior. So I don't think it's a critical issue, but just the same, the defense would have that obligation to turn it over. I would think end of July, you should make your decision by that date, but you understand your obligation. I've explained it precisely to you. You understand it. Let's proceed with our jury.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin at council table for the people, Mr. Bailey and Mr. Milius, also Mr. Henderson and Mr. Lewin are present. Mr. Bailey, and I understand you have stipulations to read to the jury?
Yes, a couple. This was actually Mr. Milius's role in the trial. Much of this, so he's going to do the stipulations.
Mr. Milius?
Yes, we have stipulation number 67, may be marked as People's 200. The parties stipulate, in 2001, Maria de Enriquez lived in apartment 3 at 2213 Avenue K. She lived there for about 4 years prior to 2001. She lived there with her husband, Jose, and baby daughter. They lived in the only upstairs apartment, which was up a set of stairs from Mr. Durst's unit. There are 2 doors that lead to her apartment unit. Her front door, which is to the left of the staircase with the number 3 on the door. There is also a second door to the right of the staircase, which leads to another part of Maria's apartment. Maria de Enriquez generally worked night shifts. Her husband worked day shifts. Her husband generally woke up a few minutes before 8 a.m. Maria de Enriquez would generally wake up before at 10 minutes to 8 a.m. to make her husband breakfast. Her husband would leave between 8 a.m. and 8:15 a.m. for work. On Friday, September 28, 2001, Maria and her husband followed this routine. At some point that morning, after her husband left, Maria heard the loud noise of opening and slamming the door. She does not recall exactly what time that morning she heard the noises. After she heard the noises, Maria opened the door of her apartment and looked down the stairwell, where she saw Mr. Durst repeatedly opening and slamming close the door to his apartment. Maria said to Mr. Durst, very loud in Spanish, to which Mr. Durst responded with a gesture that she interpreted to mean, "It's not me." Mr. Durst then went back into his apartment. Prior to hearing the door slamming, Maria did not hear any noises. She did not hear the sound of someone knocking on her front door. Maria believes that if someone was knocking on either of her doors, she would have heard it. She also did not hear anyone yelling to open the door or asking to use her phone. Maria believes that if someone had been yelling to open the door or asking to use her phone, she would have heard it. Maria has never heard the sound of gunshots coming from Mr. Durst's apartment. Party stipulate?
Stipulate.
The court has accepted that stipulation.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a second stipulation. This is actually stipulation 66, and it has two exhibits. The exhibits, may they be marked as People's 201 and People's 202, and the actual stipulation as People's 203. The stipulation goes as follows. The parties stipulate to the following. In 2001, Robert Durst had a cell phone. The cell phone was a Nokia 6160. The number of the cell phone was 415-999-7612. During the entire day of September 28, 2001, the following is the only activity associated with Robert Durst's cellular phone account. At 9:15 a.m. Central Time, an incoming call went directly to voicemail without being answered. At 2:31 p.m. Central Time, an incoming call was received. During that call, the cellular phone was used in the geographic area covered by cell sector G01B. At 3:26 p.m. Central Time, an incoming call was received. During that call, the cellular phone was used in the geographic area covered by cell sector G14B. At 3:27 p.m. Central Time, an incoming call was received. During that call, the cellular phone was used in the geographic area covered by cell sector G14C. In 2001, there were no phone calls made to 911. Cellular sites are designed to cover a specific geographic area. Cellular phone records indicate what cellular sites the phone used and thus what general geographic area the phone was located in when it made or received a phone call. In September of 2001, cellular site G01 was located at 3128 Broadway Avenue J, Galveston, Texas. Cellular site G01 was divided into three coverage areas: G01A, G01B, and G01C. Sector G01B covered the area east of 3128 Broadway Avenue J. This included 2213 Avenue K, located about 0.47 miles northwest of 3128 Broadway Avenue J, and Chalmers Hardware Store, located about 0.68 miles northwest of 3128 Broadway Avenue J. Sector G01B did not cover the San Luis Resort Hotel, 5222 Seawall Boulevard, or anything west of the hotel. The San Luis Resort Hotel is about 2.1 miles southwest of 3218 Broadway Avenue J. It is located directly across the street from the south beach of Galveston Island. In September 2001, cellular site G14 was located on the San Luis Resort Hotel. Its coverage area was divided into three coverage areas: G14A, G14B, and G14C. Sector G14C covered the San Luis Resort Hotel and the small area between the hotel and the beach. Sector Sector G14B covered the San Luis Resort Hotel and an area west of the hotel. Sector G14B did not cover 3128 Broadway Avenue J or Chalmers Hardware Store. The exhibits that I previously mentioned, 201 and 202, are attached, and they are showing the cell sites G01 and G114 as they existed on September of 2001.
And I think we can stipulate, Your Honor, that the water at Galveston has never been that blue.
Otherwise stipulated, counsel?
Yes.
The court accepts that stipulation. Tell me, what was the stipulation number that 203 represents?
Sorry, that was 66, and the previous one, the first one I read, was 67.
Thank you.
We have one additional stipulation. We might as well do it now. It's kind of an unrelated topic, but we'll get it out of the way. I have a stipulation, I have an exhibit. It's a one-page letter dated March 27th, 1981. May I mark this as People 204?
Yes.
And
Stipulation number?
the stipulation number is 68. May I mark the stipulation as People's 205?
Yes.
I apologize. The one-page letter marked for identification as People's Exhibit 204 was signed by defendant Robert Durst and sent to Kathleen Durst on or about March 27, 1981. The letter was obtained in 2004 by Westchester County District Attorney Investigator Eddie Murphy pursuant to the reinvestigation into the disappearance of Kathleen Durst.
We should read it, right?
What's that?
Should read it to the jury.
You want me to read it?
Yeah. Leave the light off. Okay.
Turn the light off.
See, I'm not the only one. You made fun of me.
Huh. Kathy, in June of 1980, you told me you wanted your own space, and at your request, I moved out of the apartment at 12 East 86th Street, and where we had lived since August 1978. At that time, I hoped that whatever the problem was would soon resolve itself. I moved into an apartment my family owned in Times Square, made no effort to take my belongings or furnish my new apartment, and in all other ways tried to act as if my life with you would soon continue. That attitude is no longer realistic, and at this time a divorce seems the only possibility. Hence, number one, when we moved to 86th Street, I brought with me most of the personal belongings I had accumulated, and at this time I would like them returned. Specifically, books, records, clothes. I think there are a couple of jackets and boots in the hall closet. Artwork, none of which has monetary value. Documents, letters, etc. in my desk. Further, the following pieces of furniture. Dining table and 5 chairs, which belonged to my grandfather. Bathroom scale, which belonged to my grandfather. Blue love seat, gift of my father. Table under Tiffany lamp, gift of my father. Red chair in bedroom, gift of my father. Desk which I built prior to our marriage. The remaining furniture was either given to you by your family or we acquired during our marriage. Number 2, during the last 9 months, we spoke almost daily on the telephone. In the future, I prefer that we keep our conversations to a minimum. 3, I have asked my attorney to make every effort to resolve this matter as quickly as possible. Signed, Bob. And I think you guys already said stipulated, correct?
Right, stipulate.
Okay.
Next, Your Honor, People's 206, 206A, testimony of Jeanne Clarke. It's one of our final videos. The full video is 3 hours and 8 minutes. And we need a transcript.
It was on underneath one. You got one good?
Thank you.
We're gonna get one. It's okay.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony about the given cause something before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name.
Jeanne, J-E-A-N-N-E.
Seems to be back, Your Honor. Maybe we should just rewind to the beginning and
Yes, please.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony about the given cause something before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name.
Jeanne, J-E-A-N-N-E-C-L-A-R-K-E.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you please indicate how old you are for the record?
74.
And when I point to this individual right here, pointing to the defendant, do you know who that is?
Yes.
Who do you know him to be?
Robert Durst.
Can you tell me how you know him?
I met him at a dinner.
And can you describe the circumstances of
It
how,
was a group dinner.
do you remember when that was?
I would say about 10 years ago.
And was that in Los Angeles?
Yes.
At the time, do you know where Mr. Durst was living?
Not at that time, no.
Do you know, in terms of when you met him, what's your understanding he was living, I'm not asking you for asking, in Los Angeles area or out of state, did you know?
This was a group dinner. There were 20 or 30 people. It was just a social event. And I don't know what I knew at that time. I may not have talked to him at all.
Do you remember what kind of social event it was to 20, 30 people?
It was a dinner, a gourmet dinner.
And what, did you and Mr. Durst have a mutual friend in common there?
No, we were both members.
Okay, that's what I'm going, what
Okay.
were you members of?
It was the LA Single Gourmet.
Okay, so it's kind of a dating group.
Sort of, yeah.
And when you indicated that you met him at this dinner, did the two of you speak at that time?
I went to several dinners. I don't remember. if it was the first time I was at dinner.
When you first met him, and I'm asking you to kind of look back on it, but now with what you know, was that after his situation in Galveston or before?
It depends on what year it is. I think it was after.
Well, I mean, at the time that you knew Mr. Durst, Morris Black, I want you to assume, was killed in September of 2001. Do you believe you met him after that?
Absolutely, because it was after 2006 or 2008, because I became a widow in 2004.
Okay, so you met Mr. Durst at this event, and you met him at several others of these, or a few others of these same events?
Yes.
Oh, and if you can just wait to answer my question until I'm finished. You won't understand you know I'm going here.
Correct. I'm trying to give you your dateline.
Like right now, the question is when you are speaking, because our court reporter is writing down what everyone says, so even just now you were speaking while I was speaking. So try to wait till the question's finished.
Just keeps doing it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Do you recall when it was that you first had a conversation with the circumstance that I'm asking for the exact date?
No, I mean, it was several people, and I don't recall when exactly it was, no.
So, forgetting about when it was, can you describe, if you can, your first interaction with him when the two of you spoke?
At the dinner table.
And at that time, did he tell you what his name was?
Yes,
Had you ever heard of it?
I had never heard of it.
And at some point in time, did you become aware that Mr. Durst was somewhat infamous?
Much later.
And years later. At that point in time, I'm talking about when you're going to these dinners, the two of you actually end up, for lack of a better term, dating.
We did go to dinner, yes.
And when you went to dinner, was this by yourselves?
Yes.
During that time, what did Mr. Durst tell you about who he was?
I think he was retired.
Did he mention that he was wealthy or anything about his family history?
No.
Did he mention to you that he had been in custody in Texas?
No.
Did he mention to you that he had been involved in an incident where he killed a man?
No.
Did he mention to you that his wife had disappeared under mysterious circumstances?
No.
Did he mention to you anything about his best friend having been murdered?
No.
So you indicated that it was a while before you found out these details, is that correct?
Yes.
Eventually, you found out all the details that I just mentioned, is that right?
Yes.
And did you ever speak to Mr. Durst about any of these details?
No.
How was it you found out?
I think just the information was on the news or the internet.
And I want to ask you, when you said you went on some dinner dates, is that a fair term?
Probably dinner.
Did you consider it a romantic date, or did you consider it platonic?
I considered it a friendship.
Who paid?
He did.
So, in terms of going to dinner, you were going originally, you met him at basically a dating club, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
So, ma'am, isn't it fair that you and Mr. Durst went on dinner date? Is that fair terminology, ma'am?
No.
What would you describe it as?
Friendship.
Friendship. At any point in time, did the two of you have any physical relationship?
I object to answering that.
Well,
I would say no. No.
how would you describe your current relationship with Mr. Durst?
Currently, I just, we stay in contact.
Is he somebody? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I heard you.
I think I have speaking to him just several times over the last few years.
How often do the two of you speak now?
I hadn't spoken to him probably 6 months.
The nature of the relationship now is correct. He calls you, and that's the nature of the relationship.
Yes, because obviously I can't call him.
And those calls, he calls you collect, right? So you need to answer yes or no.
Yes.
And do you pay for those calls?
No, I believe he has his own system of making calls.
Have you ever refused one of his calls?
No,
So when he calls, you speak to him, is that correct?
yes,
Is it fair to say that the limiting factor on how much you guys talk is not you, it's Mr. Durst and how often he calls you?
yes,
Have you ever visited him in any of the facilities he's been in?
yes, one time.
Where was this?
The Twin Towers,
And do you approximately know how long ago that was?
it was last summer.
I want to go back to when you originally went to dinner with Mr. Durst. Do you know where he was living at that time?
Beverly Hills,
Maple Street, is that right?
yes,
You ever been to his place on Maple Street?
yes,
How many times?
once,
Yeah.
once that I remember.
Have you ever stayed the night there?
No,
When you went to his address on Maple Street, was that just the two of you?
yes,
And do you recall approximately, were there in the evening, the afternoon, what were the circumstances?
The circumstances were that I was in Palos Verdes, he was in Beverly Hills, and we were going to the opera. So that was the convenient way to go.
And did you have dinner for the
I
opera?
don't remember.
Who paid for the opera?
I did not buy the tickets. I would say Mr. Durst.
And it's your position that that would not be a date, though, is that correct?
No,
What would your position be?
it would be the same as if I went with a lady friend.
Did you ever visit Mr. Durst in Houston?
Yes,
Can you describe the circumstances of that?
yes, he had been unable to travel and been in the hospital. So I traveled to Houston in order to visit him, as it would have been too difficult for him
And
to travel
when you were in Houston, where did you stay?
in his condominium.
And how long did you stay there?
2 or 3 days.
And was that in any way romantic?
No,
Who paid for that trip?
I don't remember.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you haven't paid for anything because he pays for all?
That's not true.
What have you paid for in your relationship?
Probably airline tickets to Houston and other things.
Oh, meaning you only went to Houston once, is that right?
Yes.
So you're saying you believe you might have paid for the airline tickets, or you saying?
Yeah, I think, I don't remember. I might have.
Have you and Mr. Durst ever talked about him moving close to where you live in the South Bay?
No,
You've never talked about that?
no,
Have you, Mr. Durst indicated that he's interested in buying a house in Palos Verdes Estates in the area where you live, and has he asked you if he would be recognized there?
I don't remember that, no.
Is your position that you didn't have that discussion, or simply don't remember?
I would say I don't remember that, and I don't have any knowledge of him moving there.
Have you sent letters to Mr. Durst in custody?
One,
Have you ever expressed concern about whether or not the letters you sent are being read by authorities?
no, There was nothing private.
Have you sent him packages in custody?
No.
Clip JC005, this is a call from May 20th, 2015 at 8:23 p.m.
This is,
What date?
Yeah, they are, they have those. But anyway,
And I want to thank you a lot for the stuff you sent me.
okay,
They read it all in, which I was pleasantly surprised about. They don't like to read in big piles and
I was thinking about that, if they considered that a package and would reject it or whatever, but it didn't come back.
they gave it, they opened it, but they gave it to me.
Of course, they don't open it.
You know, the way people send things is by the United States Postal Service, USPS, Express Mail. That gets opened and it gets here in 1 or 2 days.
So that's how I sent it,
I know.
because I didn't think they would accept taxes.
Well, they kind of give FedEx and UPS more difficult times. See,
I would think so.
maybe because, it's all the government or something. They want to.
Well, they don't want too many different people shipping things. They usually don't take taxes.
Ma'am, do you remember now sending it?
Yes, it was newspaper articles that I had clipped out and I sent to him. He was interested in what was in the newspaper.
He was interested in articles about himself, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in your conversations, is it fair to say that Mr. Durst always wants to see what has been written about him? Is that correct?
No, I don't remember it other than that conversation.
Well, I'm not asking you how many times you said this, I'm saying to the best of your memory, when you speak to him, Mr. Durst frequently inquires to you about articles involving him.
Yeah.
Now, as you sit here today, do you consider yourself to be an unbiased witness?
Yes.
So you don't believe that you're on any one side or another in this, is that right?
No.
Meaning it's correct? That's a double negative. Correct, you don't consider yourself to be on one side or the other?
Correct.
Have you spoken to the defense in this case?
Yes.
Have you spoken to me?
No.
Did I try to speak to you, ma'am?
DA did try to speak to me, but I don't know if it was you.
Ma'am, you're aware that I came to your house, left you my business card, correct?
Absolutely not. I do not believe that.
Ma'am.
I've never seen your card at my house. I had one phone call once.
And ma'am, do you recall being very direct in saying that you weren't going to speak to us?
I did on your phone call.
And ma'am, if you're a neutral, unbiased witness, what would be your reason for not speaking to us?
Because I do not believe you had any business contacting me.
But you felt that Mr. Durst's lawyers did.
Yes.
And ma'am, isn't that because you're Mr. Durst's friend and you want to assist him any way you can?
I would say I am his friend, but I did not believe I had any responsibility to talk to you.
Ma'am, how often have you spoken to Mr. Durst since he's been in custody? And I'm talking about since 2015, if you were to estimate.
Maybe 10, 15 times.
Would it surprise you if it was more than 2 dozen?
No.
Is there a reason that you gave that low estimate?
Yes, because many times I'm not home when I receive a phone call.
And ma'am, if we talk about the amount of times Mr. Durst has attempted to get a hold of you and left a message on a machine where you were not there to pick it up, would you agree, ma'am, that's going to be dozens of times during that period?
Yes.
I want to go back for a moment. When you found out that Mr. Durst's wife vanished, are you telling me you never asked him anything about that?
I did not.
Ma'am, did you think that that was something that, why not? Why didn't you ask him?
Because I didn't want the information.
So, ma'am, what you're telling me is, in essence, you didn't want to know what had happened to Mr. Durst's wife. And that's why you didn't ask. Is that
No.
correct? Correct, ma'am?
No.
Tell me to explain it then. You just said, I didn't want to know. What does that mean?
I'm sorry, I misspoke myself. I did not ask him.
And I'm asking you, ma'am, why? Let's back up. You meet Mr. Durst at a dating club. You go on several dinners, you stay over at his house. Ma'am, do you think it was relevant in terms of what you would want to know as to what the circumstances were involving his missing wife? Ma'am?
Yes.
I'm asking you here, you're going out on, you're saying not dates, but you're staying over his house, you're flying to Houston, staying there. By the time you had done some of these activities, you knew about Mr. Durst's history, is that correct?
Yes.
So, ma'am, you're saying, by the way, have you ever gone out with a guy whose wife disappeared and never came back? That you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
You ever gone out with a guy who shot his neighbor and dismembered him?
No.
You ever gone out with a guy whose best friend was shot in the head?
I think you're assuming things.
Oh, no, ma'am, I can show you the picture. She was shot in the head.
I am saying you have no right to ask me what you're asking me.
Well, see, ma'am, I can ask questions unless and until they're objected to. So, ma'am, what I'm asking you is, would you agree, ma'am? You're at this point, I would like to treat her as a hostile witness at first.
Right.
Thank you. Ma'am, you're going out with a man who you know his wife is missing, he shot and dismembered another guy, and his best friend was mysteriously shot in the head, and he's a suspect. You know this information, correct? You become aware of it. Correct?
No.
You never became aware of that information.
I think I was aware that there was things on the internet or the TV, but I never believed them.
Ma'am, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, were you aware of what? Now, you didn't believe that he had shot his neighbor and dismembered him?
No.
Ma'am, you're aware that Mr. Durst, his defense in his case, his testimony was that he admitted that he dismembered the man. Are you aware of that, ma'am?
No.
So the first time, ma'am, that you're hearing that Mr. Durst has admitted to dismembering the guy across the hall is today in court?
No.
Okay, ma'am, when did you become aware of that information?
I don't know.
Ma'am, isn't it true you were aware of that information well before you, for instance, flew to Houston to see Mr. Durst?
I don't remember the circumstances and what the dates they occurred.
So, ma'am, what I'm asking you is, there was a point in time where you were aware of the following three things. Mr. Durst's first wife disappeared, his best friend was shot in the back of the head, and he shot his neighbor and dismembered him in Texas. There was a point in time when you were aware of all three of these events, correct?
No.
There was no point in time?
There was no proof. There could have been speculation on the newspaper, on the internet. I don't believe everything I read on the internet.
Now, did you and Mr. Durst ever talk about the Jinx?
No, but he made me aware that it would be on TV.
And you saw the Jinx, correct?
Eventually, yeah.
And now, was it a conscious decision on your part to never ask Mr. Durst anything about his missing wife, his dead best friend, and his,
No.
it was not a, it just never came up?
Exactly.
Ma'am, as you sit here, if you're going to be spending time with somebody, do you think that it would be important to know whether or not, just as an example, that they shot the neighbor and cut up the body? Would that be something relevant for you?
I don't think I understand your question.
I'm sorry?
I don't understand your question.
Did Mr. Durst, you saw the Jinx, correct?
I did not when it came out. I was out of the country.
Now, you've seen the Jinx, correct?
Yes.
And you've seen the Jinx and continue to have conversations with Mr. Durst, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you ever discuss with him, say to him, in essence, oh my God, Bob, that stuff on the Jinx, is any of that true? Did you ever ask him?
No.
And can you explain why?
Because it's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. Have you and Mr. Durst ever talked on the phone about the Jinx?
I probably.
Do you know what he said about it?
No.
Do you recall him telling you that he, quote, messed up cooperating with the filmmakers on the case?
No.
Do you recall him telling you, ma'am, that, quote, he might have a problem after the 4th episode, but knew he had a problem after the 5th episode? Do you recall that?
No, I was out of the country. I was in Hong Kong.
JC001, 5815, 17, you recall?
119, 198?
Yes.
Or what? Is that right?
Yes.
Did you watch the HBO thing?
No, I recorded it.
So you saw it all the thing?
Yeah, I saw part of it before I left, and then I recorded it. Before it ended, I did not, I left between chapter 5 and 6.
No, so I missed chapter 6. I saw 1 through 5. And I started realizing I had made a mistake. When I got to chapter 4, I should never have spoken to that schmuck.
That's why that producer, he was a real asshole. Okay, so at what point did you think you were in trouble?
I never think I was in trouble with every kid. I didn't, the first second.
Yeah, I didn't think so because I just talked to you before I left.
First
And
third, I did not like. I didn't think they were supposed to be a problem.
right.
Fourth, I started thinking I might have a problem. Fifth, I started, I definitely had a problem.
Now, does that refresh your recollection a little better?
No, but I think the time span is off. That was much after the Jinx.
This is a call, ma'am, from February 2015. So my question is, during this call, you indicated, May, excuse me, what did I say? Yeah, May 8, 2015. And during that call, you indicated that you had seen, you indicated part of it, right? But you indicated that you had not seen all of it, is that right?
That's right.
But ma'am, during this conversation, Mr. Durst was explaining to you that he had a problem. Knew he had a problem, thought he had a problem after the 4th episode, knew he had a problem after the 5th episode. Is that correct? You recall me saying that?
I don't recall that exactly.
Ma'am, has Mr. Durst ever told you that anything that he said to the Jinx was untrue?
I don't know.
Has Mr. Durst ever told you, after you made him aware that you had seen Jinx, did Mr. Durst ever say to you, hey, listen, oh my gosh, Jeanne, I don't want you to think I killed my wife. I didn't do it. Did he ever tell you that?
No, I was out of the country.
Ma'am,
Yes.
did he ever say that to you?
I do not remember anything like that.
Well, ma'am, so my question isn't true. He never told you, never said that I didn't kill my wife, correct? Never said that to you.
I never asked him.
So ma'am, let me see if you
The
understand.
answer
Let me
is
see.
no.
Huh?
The answer is no.
So you agree he never told you that he did not kill his wife, correct?
He did not.
And ma'am, he never told you he did not shoot his best friend Susan Berman in the back of the head, correct? Never told you that.
Would you repeat that?
Ma'am, you watched the Jinx, and you had a conversation with Mr. Durst after you watched the entire Jinx, correct?
Correct.
And you let him know that you have watched the Jinx, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, wouldn't it seem that it would come up where either you would say to him, hey Bob, wow, they're saying you murdered 3 people. Or to ask him, hey Bob, what gives with these 3 people you allegedly murdered? Or for Mr. Durst to say, hey Jeanne, I didn't do any of those things they're saying I did. Did any of those conversations ever come up?
No.
Did that strike you as strange?
No.
So when you told him that you watched the Jinx, you would agree his response was in no way, that's untrue, they're lying, they made it up, correct? Never said that.
I don't know.
Ma'am, you would agree that Mr. Durst's comments when you had this conversation on May 8, 2015 about the Jinx was not to deny the content, but for him to tell you when he realized he had a problem. Do you agree that's what happened?
No.
No?
No.
How would you characterize what you just heard, ma'am?
I don't remember.
Let me play it again for you, ma'am. Let me play the same.
You watched the HBO thing?
No, I recorded it.
So you saw it all?
Yeah, I saw part of it before I left, but then I recorded it. Before it ended, I did not, I left between chapter 5 and 6.
Oh, so I missed chapter 6. So 1 through 5. I started realizing I made a mistake. And got to chapter 4, which I never spoke to that.
That's right, that producer, he was a real asshole.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at what point did you think you were in trouble?
I never think I was in trouble with whoever the kid. I didn't think the first second.
Yeah, I didn't think so because I just talked to you before I left.
First
And
where I did my life, I didn't think they were closing to get farther.
right.
Fourth, I started thinking I might have a problem. Fifth, I started, I definitely had a problem.
Ma'am, does that refresh your memory?
I believe that conversation was after he was arrested.
It was, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm not remembering that same order.
No, ma'am, my question that I'm asking you though is, during this conversation, you were telling him you've seen 5 of the 6 parts of Jinx, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree, ma'am, that through part 5, you had already seen Jinx had depicted Mr. Durst as having murdered 3 victims, correct?
No.
The Jinx did not depict him as having murdered 3 people.
Who's the Jinx?
Ma'am, you've seen 5 of the 6 episodes of the Jinx incident.
Who is the Jinx? You're confusing me. You're putting words in my mouth.
Ma'am, so listen to me. You watched the program, The Jinx. So the program, the miniseries, the 5 to 6 episodes you've seen, by the end of the 5 episodes you say you watched as of that day in May, you would agree that Mr. Durst has been depicted as having murdered 3 different people.
I disagree. No.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what you're asking. You're confusing me. I'm sorry. I can't
Ma'am,
follow your line of question.
well, listen, I'll do it again. No problem, I'll take plenty of time to explain for you. So listen to my question. Yeah. Ma'am, you watched 5 of the 6 episodes of The Jinx, is that correct?
Yes.
And ma'am, do you agree that in those 5 episodes that you watched as of this phone call, that show had depicted Bob Durst, your friend, as having murdered 3 people.
Is that what it depicted?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, ma'am, so if that's what it depicted, then during this conversation, you in fact asked, at what point did you think you were in trouble? What did you mean by that?
I don't remember because I don't remember having that conversation.
Well, ma'am, during this conversation, you would agree that Mr. Durst at no point denied any of the accusations from the Jinx. Is that correct?
No,
It's incorrect.
I don't know, I don't remember.
Well, ma'am, are you telling me that not only did you never ask Mr. Durst about these 3 incidents, disappearance of his wife, murder of Susan Berman, death of dismemberment of Morris Black, but now you can't remember if Mr. Durst ever even denied them to you?
I can't remember.
Ma'am, you would agree in this section that I played to you that Mr. Durst, after you asked him at what point you think you were in trouble, he points to the episodes and says, I thought I had a problem after 4. I knew I had a problem after the 5th episode. You recall, now that I've listened to that, that's what the conversation was?
Now that you, yes, now I recall it, I did not before.
And ma'am, when he said that, what did you take that to mean?
I did not interpret it at all.
So, you just watched 5 episodes of depicting a man who's murdered 3 people. He's now talked to you, and instead of denying it, he's now telling you, I knew I had a problem after the 4th episode, thought I had a problem after the 4th, knew I had a problem after the 5th, and you're telling me that you didn't in any way attempt to think about what that meant? First of all,
No.
what did you mean when you said, at what point do you think you were in trouble? What did you mean?
I don't remember saying that except when we play it, so I don't know what I thought that.
So when you play it now, when you listen to it, you have no clue about
I
it.
have no opinion.
Now, did you and Mr. Durst talk about, on your May 8, 2017 call, the fact that Mr. Durst had caused a problem for himself? Do you remember that?
I don't remember it. I don't remember I do not remember phone calls or the contents of them with anybody.
JC002, this is going to be from the May 8, 2017 call at 5:21 p.m.
So this is 120 and 128?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, read those newspaper articles you print out, and then you'll see the rest of the mess. And you'll see what a big problem that was for myself.
Well, I know you caused a big problem, yes, but hopefully, well, I don't think you should write to news reporters. You should listen to your attorney. Because if you write to them, then there'll be more publicity. Yeah.
Never ever gonna do it again.
Yeah, it just, they all want, the news reporters all want attention. So they're looking for anything.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you were discussing at this point in time, Mr. Durst having sent a letter to the newspaper?
Yes,
And would you agree that during this conversation, Mr. Durst is, again, not telling you, I did not say the things I said to Jinx? He's not denying having said those things, is that right?
I don't understand how this connects.
Now, to the best of your memory, again, maybe I'll just ask one since we're going. The next one. Do you know if Mr. Durst
All right, let's,
was in custody?
It seems that the conversation is moving to a different topic, so that would be a good time for us to Great. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll break until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow.